Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a nightmare you never want to live. Picture this: a foggy morning dew, hanging thick on the rusted fences outside the city morgue. It's quiet, too quiet. You walk in expecting routine, but what greets you inside is a scene that feels torn straight from a fever dream. A young woman on the table, her abdomen sliced open with surgical elegance, her insides not missing but rearranged. Each organ, each artery set carefully like petals. A perfect crimson hibiscus blooming out of her body. You probably won't want to be caught in this version of reality. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're brave enough, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know exactly where you are when this story finds you. Now dim the lights, lock your doors, and let's delve into tonight's chilling scenario together. I remember the heat in the room more than anything. Not temperature heat, emotional heat. The way it felt like something had just happened and the air hadn't recovered yet. Forensics was unusually silent. They were still cataloging the scene, but they were already calling it the hibiscus case. Her name was Elena Martinez, 23, a part-time ballet teacher, no family to call. I only found out her name because her DNA matched a decades-old abuse report from when she was 6 years old. I wish I never knew that. The thing is, it wasn't just the murder that disturbed me, it was how deliberate it felt. There were no signs of struggle, no panic, just this horrific calm. Her hands were folded gently on her stomach, her face, calm eyes open. Her mouth was sewn into a faint smile. Not stitched, not forced. Sewn like a seamstress had taken care to make her presentable. I stepped outside the room to breathe, and that's when I saw it painted in what looked like dried blood on the hallway wall just behind a cracked tile. Beauty is found only when blooming ends. That was my first real shiver. At the station, I dug through old cases. Something about this wasn't isolated. It felt too familiar. And sure enough, 3 hours in, I found something. A cold case from Indiana, 2007. A woman found in a garden shed. Abdomen split open, internal organs braided like vines. No suspect, no media attention. Then another, Boston, 2012. Same flower motif, though this one was formed with vertebrae. And that's when the nightmares started. In my first dream, I was walking through an overgrown greenhouse, vines curling around my ankles. I saw Elena standing at the far end in her white dress, bloodied but smiling, and behind her a wall covered in faces, sewn together faces. I jolted awake. 3:40 in the morning. A single knock echoed in my motel hallway. No one was there when I checked, but scrawled on my door in red Sharpie. They only scream until they bloom. I didn't report it. Not yet. Some part of me wanted to believe it was my own exhaustion turning against me, but I started locking my gun in my hand every night. Not beside me, in my hand. The autopsy revealed something we hadn't caught on the first inspection: tiny sewing needle punctures along her fingertips. Not defensive wounds, almost like she'd been made to stitch something or someone. I went back to the crime scene the next morning. I needed to see what I missed. And that's when I saw the second message on the back of a framed photograph of Elena and her ballet class. Invisible at first, but when I tilted the glass against the sun, it appeared in faint ink. To bloom is to die with purpose. Whoever wrote this didn't just want to kill, they wanted to teach, to turn every murder into a message. And the more I dug, the more it became clear Elena wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. Because on the wall of her tiny apartment covered with thick white paint, I found scratch marks. Someone, probably Elena, had clawed something into the drywall beneath. I scraped away the layers with my keys until the words emerged shaky and raw. He's going to make me bloom. I drive in silence, windshield smeared with the night's rain. That sentence keeps replaying in my head like a broken tape. He's gonna make me bloom. The way she wrote it, not in panic, not hastily. There was a resignation to it, like she knew. Like she'd been waiting for it to happen. I call in a favor from the lab request old psychiatric records. Elena's trauma file is sealed, but I know someone at the county archives. A little digging and I get a hit. Dr. Lucas Armitage, retired psychiatrist specialized in long-term trauma patients. His name pops up in 2 other historic cases involving women with heavy abuse histories who went missing and were later found arranged like botanical horror scenes. The documents never mentioned his connection, but he's in the margins. A signature here, a testimony there. I visit his home just outside the city. A rusted gate creaks open. His place is a mosaic of decaying wind chimes and birdhouses, charming if you're into taxidermy chic. Inside the walls are stained yellow with the ghosts of old cigarette smoke. The smell hits me before the door closes behind. Armitage answers the door with a quiet cough. Late 70s. Thin, sharp features, eyes like he's permanently squinting at something he can't quite make out. He seems harmless, but there's something underneath. A stillness, like a pond that's too quiet. I don't talk about my patients, he mutters, already turning back into his den. I follow anyway. Elena Martinez. You treated her when she was a child. His back stiffens. I didn't treat her, he says without turning. I managed her case. There's a difference. He pulls a folder from a cluttered bookshelf, opens it. Blank pages. He stares at them like they're full of secrets. She drew flowers, hundreds of them, always hibiscus, red and purple. Said they made her feel safe. Said they didn't judge her. Did she ever mention someone hurting her? Amen. She said he called her Little Seedling. That's all. I told the social workers. No one listened. My spine goes cold. Little Seedling. That's the exact phrase written on the ankle of the Boston victim in 2012, carved into her skin. Do you remember anything else? Anyone she might have been in contact with? He hesitates. There was one visitor, not a relative. Claimed to be a volunteer art therapist. I don't recall a name, but the way he looked at her, it wasn't right. I press him for more, but he clams up. On the way back, I call the social services office. They've got nothing in the logs. No art therapist listed for Elena's sessions. But when I cross-reference with archived visitor records from the psych center, there's a name. Gideon Marsh. I've heard of him. Fringe artist. Used to exhibit in underground galleries. Got kicked off several platforms for indecency. His work often features dismembered mannequins or abstract depictions of pain. His most infamous piece, a 5-foot painting of a woman's torso blooming like a flower. It was called Red Awakening. He's not just echoing the crimes, he's painting them. I track down his last known address, an old converted studio downtown. But when I get there, the place is cleared out. Just an echo of paint fumes and leftover tarps. There's a single canvas left behind, turned to face the wall. I flip it around. It's Elena, or someone that looks eerily like her, painted in impossibly fine strokes, her chest open like a peeled fruit organs forming a spiral. But her eyes, they're looking directly at me. There's no mistaking it. On the back of the frame, scrawled in looping cursive, "You can't stop a flower once it's started blooming." I stumble back, stomach clenching. Then I notice it taped to the underside of the canvas, folded twice, a newspaper clipping. Dated 3 years ago. A young woman found dead in Vermont. Mutilated. Flower motif again. But this one's different. Her body had been coated in wax and set aflame. And beside the clipping, a single dried hibiscus flower. Who does that? Who keeps trophies like that? Unless they're not trophies. They're breadcrumbs. That night, my motel room light flickers like it's breathing. I can't sleep, so I scan every inch of the clipping under UV. There's something faint on the back handwritten. Just 2 words. Final bloom. Whatever this is, it's not just a string of murders. It's a process, a twisted ritual, and someone's counting down. I wake up gasping. There's blood on the bathroom mirror. Not real blood, not exactly. A smear red as rust, shaped vaguely like a petal. I know it wasn't there last night. I step closer, breath fogging the glass. Written beneath the smear like an afterthought. 3 have bloomed, the 4th waits. I check the lock, still bolted, no signs of a break-in. I tear through the room, empty, but I know someone was here. I can feel it in the air, thick, heavy, humid, like a greenhouse just before it rains. After an hour of staring at the mirror like it'll give me answers, I get back in the car and drive to the precinct. I pull every file I can find connected to the cases with similar signature staged corpses, hibiscus flowers, surgically altered poses. Turns out they go back further than I thought. 1998, New Orleans. A jazz singer dismembered her body, fused into the shape of a saxophone, mouth wide in a permanent scream. 2004, Montana. A ballet teacher found hanging upside down in her studio, blood pooled beneath her in the shape of a blooming flower. 2011, Georgia. A teenage girl with no known family was found submerged in a fish tank, her skin punctured with over 80 tiny holes, each filled with a hibiscus seed. I begin to chart them all. Each point on the map draws a trail, a curve. Not random, almost like a spiral, a blooming spiral. And at the center, my city. I head to the records division. Ask for sealed evidence boxes related to an unsolved cold case from 2009, victim's name, Sarah Pike. Case never made headlines, too grotesque. Body turned into a human sculpture, lips sewn shut, ribcage painted gold. Her lungs removed and replaced with dyed flower petals. The officer at the desk raises an eyebrow. You sure you want to go down that hole again? I'm already falling. Back at my motel, I open the first box. It reeks of time and rot. Inside are photos. Too many. Sarah's body is posed like she's mid-sneeze, head tilted, arms raised. But what grabs me isn't the pose, it's the detail. Tiny inscriptions carved into her inner thighs, barely visible in the original crime photos. I grab a magnifier. Your beauty preserved, your breath removed. Bloom for him. Every victim leaves behind some kind of message. Not just carved into skin or written on walls, but something symbolic, thematic. It's as if the killer sees them not as victims, but as canvases. I pull out one more box from the pile, this one from 2018. Victim Rebecca Lynn, a performance artist. Her body was split in half and suspended from the ceiling, limbs twisted like marionette strings. The only lead, a single page, torn from a rare poetry book, tucked inside her mouth. And when her stem snapped, he kissed her decay, a bloom in crimson that would never fray. The poetry sounds familiar. I dig deeper, and bingo. The lines match a stanza from an infamous banned book, The Crimson Bloom. I have only heard about it in whispers. A so-called grimoire disguised as poetry, rumored to have been written during a spiritual movement in the 1600s, and banned in multiple countries for its incitement to ritual violence. Most of the copies were destroyed. Only a few survived, floating through dark academic circles. That's the thread now. Not just murder, not just madness. Ritual, philosophy, obsession. Someone is following this book like scripture. But how does that connect to Gideon Marsh? I drive to the university's rare book archive, pretending to be a researcher. I show them the poem fragment and ask if they've ever seen anything like it. The librarian hesitates, then nods. We had a visitor ask about that text 6 months ago, didn't give a name, but he had an artist's badge from the Marsh Collective. My heart slams. Did he access anything? She leads me to the special archives. There, under glass, is a tattered leather-bound volume. No title on the spine, just a gold emblem burned into the cover, a single hibiscus bloom. I'm not allowed to touch it directly, but I get to photograph a few pages. It's worse than I imagined. Each poem is paired with anatomical sketches, grotesque drawings of dismemberment, surgical instructions on how to pose the vessel. My hands are shaking. This isn't poetry, it's a guidebook. I leave the university with more questions than answers. Who originally wrote The Crimson Bloom? How did Marsh get his hands on a copy? Is he mimicking it or interpreting it as prophecy? Back at the motel, I notice something odd on my car windshield. A note under the wiper. Folded twice, no return address. I open it. Inside, a single sentence written in the same cursive I saw behind Marsh's painting. You look too closely into the flower and now it sees you. I freeze. Then I feel it again, like I'm not alone. I turn slowly. In the parking lot across the street, a man stands half in shadow. Long coat, holding what looks like a bundle of flowers. He doesn't move, doesn't blink, and then he's gone. Not walked away, just gone. I'm not paranoid, I know what I saw. Someone is watching me, luring me closer, and every step I take brings me deeper into something ancient and alive. The next morning, I wake with a pounding headache and the memory of that shadowy figure burning in my mind. The city feels different, heavier, like the air itself has been thickened by unseen eyes. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being hunted or worse, baited. I drag myself to the precinct, determined to dig deeper into the people connected to Elena. My first stop, Lucas Armitage, the retired psychiatrist who treated her. The guy's reputation is spotless on paper, decades of helping patients, a pillar of the community. But something about him feels off. I pull his file and find records of Elena's treatment. She was fragile, broken, a victim of abuse who found refuge in Lucas's care. But the notes hint at something darker, mentions of delusional fantasies and obsessive fixations on death and beauty. I track down his home, a modest, ivy-covered house with a garden that looks out of place in the run-down neighborhood. I ring the bell. No answer. I peer through the window and see nothing but shadows and dust-covered bookshelves. Creepy vibes, definitely. On the way back, my phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. They all bloom, but not all petals fall the same. I block the number, but feel the words crawl under my skin. Next up, Gideon Marsh, the artist and poet whose grotesque paintings have been haunting me since I first saw that disturbing gallery photo. I visit the studio listed on his website, only to find a padlocked door and windows darkened by grime. Neighbors whisper about Marsh's obsession with decay and how he vanished months ago after a fire destroyed his last exhibit. The landlord shakes his head. Kid was talented, but too weird. No one's seen him since the blaze. I scour social media and forums. A thread pops up in a dark art community. Has anyone seen Gideon? His paintings have been appearing at bizarre crime scenes. Is he the Crimson Bloom killer or just a fanatic? No answers, only speculation. Then I reach out to Reverend Caleb, the leader of the secretive religious sect Elena once joined. The church is a towering Gothic building, stained glass windows depicting hibiscus flowers, something I hadn't noticed before. Inside, the air smells of incense and something faintly metallic. Caleb greets me with a cold smile and eyes like chipped onyx. He denies any involvement, of course, but his sermons revolve around sacred suffering and transcending pain to reach purity. I feel like I'm listening to a cultist explaining why mutilation is divine. I push too hard. He warns me some flowers must be pruned brutally to bloom true. Then there's James Duval, a polished politician with a clean image that cracks under the weight of rumors, whispers of abuse cover-ups and hush money. I meet him under the pretense of background checks, but his guarded answers and icy demeanor make me wonder if he's hiding more than dirty politics. Piecing it all together feels like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces burned. Back at my place, I pore over timelines, photographs, and police reports. I can't escape the feeling that the killer is orchestrating this, watching my every move. Late at night, I hear a faint tapping at the window. Heart racing, I pull back the curtain, nothing but a single fresh hibiscus flower pinned to the glass by a tiny blood-red needle. I'm not just chasing a killer, I'm being dragged into a dark ritual, one petal at a time. That hibiscus on my window is like a cruel calling card, a signature I can't ignore. I tuck it carefully into an evidence bag, hands still trembling. It's early morning, but sleep has fled, replaced by a cold sense of urgency that tightens my chest. I head back to the precinct to check for any new developments. The analyst has returned DNA results from the last 3 unidentified victims. All match Elena's pattern. Mutilated bodies bloomed with that same floral obsession. The killer's method is evolving, or maybe becoming more daring. I'm handed a thin file marked Cold Cases, 20 years worth of similar crimes overlooked, misclassified. The common thread: each victim had some connection to dance or performance. Their bodies turned into grotesque art installations, mimicking a flower's bloom, each more horrific than the last. It hits me these aren't random murders. This is a carefully choreographed sequence, like a morbid ballet staged by a deranged mind. I make a list of all the victims: dancers, street performers, freelance workers, all with histories of abuse or trauma, each one erased in a crescendo of blood and beauty. My gut screams that the killer has deep knowledge of anatomy, sure, but what chills me is the hints of Baroque art, the flamboyant, almost theatrical way the bodies are displayed. And then there's the philosophy, Eastern mysticism, about the hibiscus flower symbolizing delicate beauty, fleeting life, and the painful process of blooming. I look into this more. The hibiscus flower, it seems, is a metaphor for life's brief but intense bloom before death. It's used in rituals, poetry, even dark spiritual ceremonies, forbidden texts, hinting at the crimson bloom ritual where the flower's ephemeral beauty is captured through suffering and sacrifice. I cross-reference this with the banned poem Michael mentioned in the files, The Crimson Bloom, written centuries ago by a mad poet who believed that true beauty only comes from death's embrace. The poem describes a ritual of killing unbloomed flowers to preserve their beauty forever. Creepy as hell. One thing's clear: the killer is performing an obsession, a sick ritual to capture and eternalize suffering in the form of blooming hibiscus flowers. I start digging into the people connected to this macabre philosophy. That leads me to Gideon Marsh, again the artist whose paintings echo the imagery of dissected women, some of whom seem to be posed in the same horrifying bloom configurations. His disappearance looks less like a vanishing act and more like a deliberate retreat. But why is he the mastermind, a copycat, or a pawn in someone else's game? The trail leads me next to Theodore, a name I stumble upon in a consultation report about a mentally disturbed man with a history of violent outbursts, recently escaped from a psychiatric facility. Theodore's profile fits the pattern: obsessed with beauty, suffering, and the idea of preserving souls through art. His past is a twisted mosaic of family tragedy, loss, and growing madness. I realize the killer's network runs deep. It's not just a lone predator, but someone supported, groomed, or inspired by others who share this morbid vision. The pieces are sliding together, but time is running out. Theodore. The name lingers in my mind like a shadow I can't shake. I dig deeper, pulling up every scrap I can find on him. A man with a tragic past whose daughter suffered from a rare nerve decay that robbed her of sensation, and with it, the ability to appreciate the world's beauty. The irony isn't lost on me, a man obsessed with preserving beauty in death because it was slipping away in life. I trace Theodore's last known address to a crumbling mansion perched on a hill outside town. It's the kind of place you see in horror flicks, with peeling paint and windows like dead eyes staring out into the dark. No one's lived there for years or so, I thought. I decide to check it out, even though the sun is sinking fast, turning the sky into a bruised purple. The air grows colder with each step, and I feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up like the house itself is breathing, waiting. Inside, the place reeks of old wood rot and something metallic. I move quietly through the halls, my flashlight cutting swaths through the darkness. I find sketches pinned to the walls, grotesque drawings of flowers fused with human anatomy petals, made of rib stems twisting into arteries. The art is horrifying, but strangely mesmerizing. I catch my breath, trying to steady my pounding heart. Then I find it a basement door, heavy and barred. The lock looks old but intact. I pull out my tools, picking it with trembling fingers. The door creaks open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A faint, sickly sweet scent hits me like wilted flowers soaked in blood. Down below, the walls are lined with glass tanks, some cracked, some filled with cloudy water and floating petals. One tank holds a mummified corpse, needles pinning hibiscus petals to her skin in a ritualistic pattern. Her eyes are closed, but the expression on her face looks peaceful, too peaceful. I'm about to turn when a faint whisper brushes my ear. I freeze. "Bloom," the voice breathes. "Bloom for me." I whirl around, but there's no one there. The whispering grows into a chorus, voices echoing from the shadows. My flashlight flickers, and for a moment I see her, Elena, standing at the far end of the room. Her mouth is slashed into a twisted smile, eyes glinting with something unholy. She shakes her head violently, then collapses into a pile of petals that scatter across the floor. I stumble back, heart hammering, breath ragged. This isn't just a crime scene anymore. It's a haunted shrine, a monument to madness. I know now that Theodore isn't just a suspect. He's a monster obsessed with blooming souls, like flowers forcing victims into eternal agony. But why? What is he trying to prove? And where is the final bloom? I'm back in my cramped apartment, lights off, except the desk lamp casting long shadows on the scattered files. The images from Theodore's mansion haunt me like a waking nightmare, glass tanks filled with corpses, petals pinned to skin like some sick tribute to beauty and death. I rub my temples, trying to piece together the fragments. Theodore's obsession is clear, but it's not just about preserving beauty. It's about control, resurrection, playing God with flesh and soul. His daughter's slow decay broke him. Now he's trying to rewrite that story, forcing others to bloom in death what his daughter lost in life. I pull up Elena's files again, scanning every detail. There's a photo from a year ago where she's smiling, but the bruises on her arms tell another story. Abuse, trauma, fear. And those scars weren't just physical. Something in her eyes is hollow, like she'd already been pulled into some darkness. I reach out to Lucas Armitage, the retired psychiatrist who treated her. Maybe he can shed light on what Elena faced behind closed doors. His phone rings once, twice, then he picks up with a weary voice, the kind that's heard too many horrors. "We lost her," Lucas says quietly. Elena was fragile, fractured. She carried wounds deeper than anyone saw. I warned her, but sometimes the past drags you down so hard, there's no escape. His words hit me like a punch. I ask if she ever mentioned anyone threatening her, anyone tied to that secretive sect Reverend Caleb leads. Lucas hesitates, then admits she was terrified of them. They believe in purifying pain through sacrifice. It's twisted, but real. A chill runs through me. The religious angle makes the case more dangerous than I thought. These people don't just kill, they ritualize. That night, I lie awake, visions of Elena's slashed smile flickering behind my closed eyelids. The whispers return like a maddening lullaby. Bloom, bloom. I realize the killer isn't just murdering bodies, he's trying to awaken something darker, something that feeds on suffering and beauty twisted together. The deeper I go, the less I trust my own mind. Am I tracking a killer or walking into a nightmare he's set? Every clue feels like a trap, every shadow a looming presence. I need to find Gideon Marsh. If his art predicts these horrors, maybe his disappearance is the key. I track Gideon Marsh to a rundown artist's studio on the edge of town, the kind of place where paint fumes mingle with dust and forgotten dreams. The doors ajar, swinging slowly in the stale air like it's warning me to stay away. But I push in anyway, flashlight slicing through the darkness, revealing walls plastered with canvases, half-finished, grotesque, beautiful. Dissected women painted in haunting detail, their faces serene despite the chaos their bodies endure. Each one cradling a hibiscus bloom, blood red, impossible to ignore. I notice something strange. Several paintings have fresh paint strokes, as if Gideon had just vanished mid-creation. A diary lies on a cluttered table, its pages filled with feverish notes, blending anatomy poetry and references to ancient Eastern texts. One passage catches my eye. Only through pain can the crimson bloom eternalize, transcending flesh to capture the soul's fragile beauty. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushes past me, carrying a faint scent of flowers, hibiscus. Unmistakably, my skin prickles. I realize I'm not alone. Something shifts in the shadows, and I catch a glimpse of a figure slipping behind a curtain. I call out, but no answer comes. The studio feels alive with an unsettling energy, like the paintings themselves are watching, waiting. I pocket the diary and head outside, but the night air feels thick, heavy with unseen eyes. Gideon Marsh is playing a dangerous game, and I've just stepped into his gallery of horrors. Back at my car, I scan the diary again. There's a sketch of a faceless figure, stitched skin on a doll matching one of the crime scenes, and a poem. The bloom demands a final sacrifice, where beauty and death entwine in crimson dance. The pieces are falling into place, but the picture is darker than I imagined. Who is Gideon hiding from, or worse, who is he trying to become? I drive off, the weight of the diary pressing down on me, knowing the killer's masterpiece is far from finished. The next morning, I'm digging into Gideon's past, trying to find anyone who could have seen him lately, or maybe slipped through his cracks. A former gallery owner mentions Gideon's obsession with Eastern philosophy, especially a banned poem called "The Crimson Bloom," whispered to inspire cult-like followers. The poem, she says, describes a ritual where victims must bloom in death, forever captured in a moment of perfect, gruesome beauty. I tracked down Reverend Caleb, the secretive leader of the sect Elena once attended. His church is a decaying relic on the outskirts, stained glass, cracked like broken promises. He greets me with cold eyes, barely hiding contempt. When I ask about Elena, his smile twitches too sharp to be kind. She sought enlightenment, he says, voice low, but sometimes enlightenment demands sacrifice. I press him on the poem, but he deflects, warning me not to chase shadows. Still, his evasiveness screams louder than any confession. I leave feeling like I've just touched something sacred and dangerous. That night, my dreams twist into something darker. Elena appears again, this time in a tattered dress, eyes hollow but burning with silent rage. She holds out a hibiscus, petals dripping blood. The hallway stretches endlessly behind her doors, slamming shut one by one, trapping me in a nightmare that feels too real. I wake, gasping, heart pounding. It's no longer just a case, it's a message. Someone wants me tangled deeper. And I'm starting to wonder if the killer is not just an artist or a madman, but someone with a twisted philosophy that sees death as creation and me as the next canvas. I can't shake the feeling that I'm walking a razor's edge, and every clue pulls me deeper into a labyrinth of madness. Gideon Marsh remains elusive, his name, whispered like a curse in every dark corner I visit. Then I get a lead from a janitor at the old art school, a place Gideon once taught. He remembers Gideon mentioning a final piece, something he called the ultimate expression of the crimson bloom. Curious, I head to the school after hours. The place is a tomb of forgotten canvases and dusty sculptures, shadows stretching like fingers ready to snatch me. In a locked storage room, I find a stash of Gideon's paintings, grotesque, beautiful, and utterly disturbing. Each one depicts women posed in unnatural, violent positions, their bodies adorned with hibiscus flowers, petals eerily pinned to their skin like some macabre ritual. As I study the paintings, a chill crawls up my spine. One canvas stands out, a woman split in half, suspended midair like a ballerina, arms reattached to her knees, her face frozen in a silent scream. The same pose I'd read about in the reports. It's as if Gideon wasn't just inspired by the murders, he was predicting them, almost guiding the killer. Suddenly, I hear footsteps echoing down the hallway. Someone else is here. My heart hammers as I hide behind a sculpture, breath shallow. The footsteps stop near the storage door. I catch a glimpse of a tall figure with a heavy coat, hands stained dark. Before I can react, they slip away into the night. I'm left clutching the paintings, feeling more lost than ever. The killer's art isn't just decoration, it's a twisted map of suffering, and I'm trapped somewhere in its center. The next morning, my phone buzzes with an anonymous message, just a single line, "Find Theodore." He holds the final bloom. No name, no number, just that cryptic clue. Theodore. The name rings a bell from the psychiatrist I consulted earlier. A disturbed man with a fractured mind linked somehow to the cases I'm chasing. Could he be the killer or just another pawn in this sick game? I start digging. Theodore's past is a twisted tangle of grief and obsession. His daughter suffered from a rare nerve disease, slowly stealing her ability to feel beauty, joy, or even pain. It consumed him, turning love into madness. I picture him in a dimly lit room, desperate to capture the fading spark in his daughter's eyes, but warped by his grief into something monstrous. I track Theodore to a decrepit mansion perched on a hill, looming like a beast guarding its prey. The locals whisper rumors of strange lights and screams, but no one dares approach. I steel myself and push open the rusted gate, every creak echoing like a warning. Inside, the air is thick with decay and something far more sinister, a sickly sweet scent of rotting flowers and antiseptic. As I move through the grand hall, I find remnants of his obsession withered, hibiscus petals pinned under glass-faded photographs of a girl smiling through the years of decline, and scattered medical journals detailing his failed attempts to halt the disease. I descend into the mansion's underground chamber, heart pounding. There, bathed in cold light, is the final bloom, a young girl strapped to an operating table, eerily calm, her body already marked with surgical incisions. The resemblance to Theodore's daughter is unmistakable, and to Elena, a sick ritual about to reach its horrific crescendo. Suddenly, footsteps thunder behind me. Theodore appears, eyes wild, clutching a scalpel like a twisted artist ready to finish his masterpiece. The room narrows to this moment, a collision of desperation, madness, and the cruelest form of love. Theodore's wild eyes lock onto mine, and for a moment I see the shattered father beneath the monster, a man broken by loss and obsession. He whispers about eternal beauty, about preserving the soul in crimson bloom. His voice shakes a fragile thread of sanity tangled in his madness. I try to reason with him, but the lines between savior and executioner blur as he lunges forward. The girl on the table lets out a soft whimper, and I realize time is slipping away. This nightmare is about to become real. In the chaos, I manage to wrestle the scalpel from his grasp, the cold blade slipping from my sweaty fingers before I finally pin him down. But Theodore doesn't resist. He almost seems relieved, as if his twisted purpose has been fulfilled. He murmurs, "You don't understand. She's the final bloom. Without her, the cycle ends." I glance at the girl, tears streaming down her pale face. She's terrified but alive. I radio for backup, heart pounding as I wait in the shadowed room, the oppressive silence broken only by Theodore's low chants of some forgotten prayer. When the police arrive, Theodore is calm, almost resigned. As they cuff him, I catch a glimpse of a small folded paper, clutched tightly in his hand, marked with the crimson hibiscus symbol that's haunted me since day one. I unfold it slowly, revealing a handwritten note. Beauty cannot die. It only changes form. The bloom is eternal. The weight of those words settles over me like a suffocating fog. This wasn't just a murder spree. It was a ritual, a perverse philosophy turned into flesh and blood horror. But the puzzle isn't complete. Something gnaws at me. Who else knew of Theodore's plan? Who helped orchestrate this nightmare from the shadows? Back at the precinct, the folded note burns in my pocket like a warning. I can't shake the feeling that Theodore was only the tip of this monstrous iceberg. There's a puppet master pulling strings from the darkness, someone with a cold mind and a twisted vision. That someone I suspect is the psychiatrist who advised me early on, a man whose calm demeanor hid a labyrinth of secrets. I dig through his files, tracing his connections, and every thread leads back to Theodore. The doctor had been mentoring him, shaping his obsession, fueling the madness. I confront him under harsh fluorescent lights, watching his calm facade crack just enough to reveal the chilling truth. He saw Theodore as an experiment, a way to prove that beauty and horror are inseparable, that the human soul could be twisted into art. The murders were his project, his masterpiece, painted in blood and pain. His confession is cold, clinical. No remorse, just detached fascination. He admits to orchestrating the entire sequence of murders, manipulating vulnerable victims and broken minds to enact his vision of the immortal crimson bloom. As I listen, the walls seem to close in the weight of all those lost lives pressing down. But before I can press further, a faint sound stops me. A whisper, a breath too close, a shadow flickering at the edge of the room. I spin around. The psychiatrist's smile fades. "It's never over," he says. "The bloom never dies." I realize then that the nightmare might be far from over. The darkness that birthed this horror is deeper, more tangled than I ever imagined. The psychiatrist's words echo in my mind as I leave the precinct, the night wrapping around me like a shroud. I'm no longer just chasing a killer. I'm unraveling a legacy of madness that threatens to consume everything I thought I knew about evil. I retrace my steps to the mansion, this time with a new sense of urgency and dread. The place feels alive, like a breathing wound in the landscape. The peeling wallpaper, the broken chandeliers, they're all reminders of the beauty decayed by time and horror. Inside the mansion's deepest chamber, I find remnants of Theodore's final ritual petals, scattered like blood drops, a shattered doll with stitched skin, and a chilling silence that screams louder than any scream I've heard. It's the calm before a storm that never came, maybe because I interrupted it. But there's more, an old journal hidden beneath the floorboards. The psychiatrist's handwriting twists across the pages, revealing his twisted philosophy on life, death, and art. He saw the hibiscus not just as a flower, but as a symbol of transformation, a brutal rebirth through suffering and decay. Reading it, I understand the full horror. The murders weren't just crimes. They were rituals meant to defy death itself, to capture the fleeting essence of life in a crimson bloom frozen forever. I step outside into the cold night air, feeling the weight of those words pressing on my chest. The city around me is unaware, oblivious to the darkness lurking in plain sight. I know now the story doesn't end with Theodore's capture. The seed of this madness is planted deep, and its roots stretch far beyond what I can see. I'm left wondering how many other crimson blooms are waiting to unfold in the shadows. The quiet after the storm feels fragile, like the moment right before dawn when the world holds its breath. I sit alone in my apartment, the city's hum a distant lullaby, but my mind races with the faces and horrors I've uncovered. Elena's eyes, wide open in death, haunt every corner of my thoughts, and the delicate petals of the crimson bloom keep folding themselves into my nightmares. I go over every detail again: the psychiatrist's manipulation, Theodore's obsession, the vanished artist, the victims arranged like grotesque art pieces. It's a nightmare I lived through, a puzzle, where every piece slices deeper into the dark heart of human cruelty. But despite the resolution, the story feels unfinished. The shadows still linger in places I haven't yet dared to look. The whisper of petals falling, the faint echo of a twisted lullaby, they remind me that evil never truly dies. It just waits, blooming quietly in the night. I'm left with a question that claws at my sanity. What if this isn't the last crimson bloom? What if somewhere someone else is nurturing this dark garden, waiting for their time to harvest? So before I sign off tonight, I want you to think about the beauty we chase and the darkness we might be blind to. Because sometimes the most terrifying things aren't monsters hiding under the bed, but the secrets buried deep in human hearts. Remember, stay vigilant. Lock your doors, watch the shadows a little closer. The crimson bloom could be closer than you think.